want to welcome you to the debates tonight, and it's put on by the Chelmsford Town Committee, the Republican Town Committee. And we'll first start the meeting with Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And thank you very much for coming. And Brian will start the debate. Thank you.
It's nice. We have a nice crowd tonight. Thank you for coming tonight. My name's Brian Latine. I'm a town meeting rep, and I'm the treasurer of the Chelmsford Republican Town Committee. Every year we try to have a municipal debate when we have folks come in and volunteer their time, treasure, and talent to our town. So we like to hear from them. So on behalf of the town of Chelmsford, thank you all for volunteering to serve our town. Chelmsford's a better place because you've agreed to donate your time, treasure, and talents, and it's much appreciated. So in case we don't tell you often enough, thank you. So I have the honor to be the moderator for this evening's debate. It is Tuesday, March 28th, 2023, and we're actually being recorded for on cable TV in Chelmsford here, and it actually goes to YouTube, so you can see it any place in the country. We have cameras in the back of the room, and I'll tell the candidates that those are a lot of the voters that you'll be talking to, not necessarily to me at this end of the table. So think about that when you're doing your piece. We have the planning board debate first. We have 3 candidates for 2 positions on the Chelmsford Planning Board. The questions for the debate have been developed by the Chelmsford Republican Town Committee debate committee. And one question was actually given to the candidates in advance. Additional questions are being solicited by the audience in this room. You'll see an orange card on your chair. And if you'd like to ask a question, we'd certainly appreciate that. Because the town questions you have a different view than maybe the folks that were looking at this at the beginning. So if you have an issue you'd like to write down, please write legibly, and then just hold your hand up and we'll have somebody pick it up and bring it up here, and we'll hopefully get some of those questions asked. At the present, if we have time to do questions from the audience, we'll do that. Are there any press folks present? No, okay. I've also asked the candidates to prepare a couple of questions to ask one of their opponents. I think that's important as well. So hopefully they have something in their back pocket for doing that. Candidates are given 1 minute to answer the question, and at my discretion, if the opponent is mentioned or if there's a bit of a challenge there, by another candidate, we may give them another 15 seconds for a response. That's up to discretion of the moderator. We have a card. Lincoln is holding a card there with a 1 minute response. When you have 15 seconds left, he'll hold up a card, and at the finish, at the minute or the 2 minutes at the beginning, he'll hold up out of time and he'll ring a bell, and I'll stop you at that point. So that's the bell. Beautiful. That's the 1 minute warning. Okay. I've asked each one of the candidates to give us a bio and explain who they are and perhaps why they're running for the position. This position, again, is for planning board in town. And I'd like to ask the candidates to actually give us your bio yourselves rather than me read it. So I'll start with the gentleman at my left.
Left, yes.
My other right. Mike Reisbeck.
Sure.
Would you please?
Sure, thank you, Brian. Hello, I'm Mike Reisbeck. I've lived in town for 40 years, put 2 sons through the Chelmsford school system, and I'm currently a TM rep and also on the Agricultural Commission. And for 14 of those 40 years, I've been a member of the planning board. The professional background and education and experience includes software engineering, law, and recently farming. What I offer the planning board is a wealth of very relevant knowledge and experience, 14 years of experience. I would point out the planning board has two functions. Administering the zoning bylaws and related bylaws, and planning for the future. As a planner, I strive to find a middle path that allows for the inevitable development as the town grows and the society changes, but to apply controls as allowed by the bylaws to moderate the process, steer the development, and mitigate negative effects. As an administrator, my personal objective is to impartially apply the bylaws of the town as they were written, approved, and intended. And that covers me.
Fantastic, thank you. Doreen?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Doreen Dashler, and I am new to the political arena of Chelmsford, but not new to the town of Chelmsford. I am running on a common sense platform. My political experience is based on traditional upbringing and an understanding of what we as citizens are supposed to do. I have lived in Chelmsford since 1989. I have been involved in the community from early on, volunteering for the Chelmsford Little League and in Chelmsford Pop Warner. I decided to run when I saw 4-story complexes and proposals for warehouses near residential areas happening in my town. I believe in following the law and in protecting our family neighborhoods and open spaces. The planning board strives to guide land last, but use management that preserves the character and integrity of the town. This is the planning board's mission statement, of which I promise to keep. I promise to keep Chelmsford, Chelmsford.
Thank you. And John, please.
Thank you, Brian. Good evening. I'm proud to say that Chelmsford's been my home for 57 years. I'm a graduate of Chelmsford High School, class of 1984, and it was an honor to be inducted into the CHS Alumni Hall of Fame last October. My education includes a Bachelor of Science in Industrial Management from the University of Massachusetts Lowell and an MBA from Suffolk University. For 15 years, I've been employed as the town of Chelmsford's finance director, treasurer, collector. I also have 14 years of additional municipal experience in the areas of public works and also has served as the financial coordinator for the Chelmsford Public Schools. My civic involvement in elected office includes serving as a town meeting representative from 1989 to 2003, and I currently serve as an elected member of the Cemetery Commission. My family includes my wife Nancy and daughter Erin.
Thank you very much. And we did send a question out to the individual candidates, and I'd like to ask that now. And John, if you would start first. Currently, the residents of Chelmsford, for the most part, have lived in a quiet, suburban, mostly residential community. Zoning changes, large development projects, and urbanization of our town and nearby communities is starting to give us a city-like appearance. What do you plan to do as an elected planning board official to mitigate city problems and or re-encourage our more New England town-like appearance and atmosphere?
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I describe Chelmsford really as an economically developed suburb. I don't know if I would say that it has an urban appearance. There's still many parts of the town that look suburban to me. However, I am concerned about the density. The density of our town's increased in a number of areas. And my concern for this is that the stress that this is going to put if we continue to grow at this level on our roads, our sewer system, and our public schools.
Okay. And Doreen, please.
Yes, I believe strongly in preserving the quiet suburban integrity of the town of Chelmsford. I will stand firm and follow the planning board's own mission statement, which I stated earlier, to guide the land and preserve the character and integrity of the town. This means single-family home neighborhoods and open spaces. This means remaining a mostly residential community and protecting that community from 4-story condominium apartment complexes in their neighborhoods or warehouses next door. This includes protecting the residents of Chelmsford from noise pollution from large tractor-trailer trucks in and around their neighborhoods all hours of the day and night. It includes preserving current residents' rights to privacy by not building tall complexes next to their homes where they lay privy to residents of these high-rises looking down into their backyards and houses and windows. This also includes keeping our open spaces that provide refuge for our wildlife and works as a buffer for noise pollution and removes carbon dioxide from the air and, sorry, and provides us with oxygen. Then there's the issue of just not building larger than what the town can actually support, which is what he had just said about not being able to support with the sewage and the schools and the roads, and the water.
Thank you. And Mike?
Sure. Well, oddly, I agree with the sentiments of the other two candidates, but I have to say that change is indeed coming to Chelmsford and to all the surrounding towns as well. Urbanization, to some degree, happens. It's driven more by market force than anything else. We can and have put some controls on it, and we can try to mitigate the problems, and I think that's what the responsibility is of the planning board within the constraints of the bylaws as they are written. But no amount of work on the planning board's part or the select board's part or any other board's part is going to completely stop this development.
Thank you. And this one, I'll move around a little bit. Doreen, question for you. Can you cite any examples of mistakes that you know about or you think the public believes were made by the planning board? Please comment and offer a solution to avoid similar mistakes in the future.
Well, River Neck Road, that was a mistake. It shouldn't have gone as far as it went. I mean, to not know that a 4-bin warehouse in a residential area like that with trucks coming in and out, isn't going to be a problem for the neighbors. I mean, common sense tells you there's going to be a problem. Neighbors are going to be woken up, or they're not going to be able to go to sleep because of the noise. That should never have gotten as far as it got.
Thank you. And John, please.
Yeah, I think one of the things that prompted me to get into this race was when I saw the issue with a citizen bringing forward a series of petition articles because the concept of the definition in our zoning bylaws of a warehouse is kind of outdated. I get concerned because all of us in this room know that e-commerce has been growing and growing steadily, and it even more so during the pandemic. So it was only a matter of time before a distribution center would be targeted for Chelmsford. And so I think I would like to see the planning board, if I'm elected, be more proactive going forward to try to avoid those types of situations.
Correct. And Mike?
Well, I would agree with John that a little more proactivity on the part of the planning board is good. But remember, the planning board is there not to do what a lot of people in front of it at a meeting want done. It's there to do what is in the zoning bylaws. So there are a lot of limitations on us. I would agree with you on being a little more proactive. We've had more than a few situations where people have complained, I think with some justification, that projects did not actually get implemented the way we had expected them to be implemented. On the other hand, keep in mind that the planning board is not it's a regulatory board. It is not an enforcement organization.
Okay. And I'm not hearing solutions on these. Could you expand a little bit and say, if the board made a mistake, is there a solution that would resolve the mistake? We're not perfect.
Yeah. Well, darn sure we're not perfect. I think in the case of of various projects that don't seem, when you drive by them, to have gone exactly the way we would have liked, I think that's a matter for getting the building department, the building commissioner, more active. They are driven largely by comments and complaints from citizens. So if you see something that you don't think has been implemented properly, by all means get a hold of them. That will help us cure any mistakes that have been made.
Okay, and John, solution, if the planning board makes a mistake, perhaps we've made one? Solution.
If we, I think the way to get in front of that is just to work with other members to try to figure out, go periodically review the zoning bylaws and see if there are updates. I know periodically updates are brought to town meeting, and then it's a matter of, clearing the two-thirds vote hurdle at town meeting and convincing two-thirds or more representatives that the change is needed.
Okay, thank you. Doreen, solution?
Solution would be, like he said, to work with the other board members, but also to work with the residents. I mean, I think the people that most get affected by it are the residents, and it's the residents that need to, have a say into what's going on. So I think you need to work with the residents.
And next question, in this one, I'll start with John. Town meeting voted to restrict the size of warehouses in town. The planning board might have a different opinion of that activity. Please comment on your opinion of this type of development. I'm talking about warehousing and in particular, large warehousing.
Well, after the citizens petition last October, we know that very large distribution centers, and I want to draw a distinction between warehouses and distribution centers. I know for myself, I'm not against warehouses as long as they are not too large. And by that, I mean it's basically an area to store goods in, probably for business-to-business delivery. I want to draw a distinction between that and distribution centers, which sort of think of UPS, constant inflow and outflow of parcels and packages all 24/7. It's a 24/7 operation. To me, that's a lot different and of an impact on a neighborhood. So I will be very cautious on voting on any warehouses or distribution centers if I'm elected to this board.
Okay, and Mike, please, comment on
Well,
warehousing.
I would comment on the warehousing. I agree that's not the best use. It's not the use we would like to see. Unfortunately, office space, if you just drive up and down 128, you'll find tons of it wide open. That's not what we're going to get because that's not what people are building. Large-scale residential is going to be extremely difficult with a sewer moratorium. We can try to control what we get, but we're going to be driven to a substantial degree by the market. Another point I would make is this distinguishing between a warehouse and a distribution center. You mentioned UPS as a distribution center. It's got more business to business than anything else. It may be a warehouse. You can put together wonderful sounding definitions and put them into your bylaws, but where the rubber meets the road, you may find that those definitions don't serve you nearly as well as you wish.
And John, would you like to respond to warehouse versus distribution center? 15 seconds.
Well, real quick, we can get bogged down in definitions,
Yeah.
but I think people are smart enough to know a difference of a distribution center and a warehouse. I know I do. And if that's in our neighborhood, I'm going to be very cautious because of the detrimental effects that it will have.
Well, I agree with this
Thank
caution.
you, thank you. And Doreen?
Say that question again, please.
The question is, town meeting had voted to restrict the size of warehouses in town, and I wanted to have you please comment on your opinion of this type of development here in Chelmsford.
Oh, I applaud the selectmen for doing that, because I don't believe in warehouse. I mean, that Route 129 and the buildings that are there, they were not made for warehouses. They were made for, which we don't have anymore thanks to NAFTA, they were made for electronics. They were made for people to go in and work, do electronics, do that type of stuff. And then unfortunately, NAFTA came along and all the electronic plants went overseas. That's when Apollo left, Sun Electronics left, all those places left for overseas. But they were not made for warehouses. I remember when then 129 was a residential area and there were all houses and trees along that road. And they cut those down to make those buildings not for warehouses, for electronic buildings. So they're not made for warehouses.
And I gave 15 seconds to comment on warehouse versus distribution center. Would you want to add to?
Well,
your comment?
like he said, everybody knows the difference between a distribution center and a warehouse. Distribution, like he said, is constant in, out, in, out, in, out, trucks going 24/7, which is what I talked about, having neighborhoods deal with trucks going from 7 in the morning till 1 in the morning, or 5 in the morning till 1 in the morning. It's just not made for neighborhoods.
Okay. And Doreen, I'm come back to you on the next question. Do you see areas in town that potentially could support development that would be a benefit to the town and is acceptable to the residents who live near those areas?
There are some spaces, but what I'd like to see, what I think the town needs, I think the town needs more senior housing. But when I say senior housing, I don't mean these high-rises. I mean, that common sense again plays into my mind with senior housing. You're a senior. If there's a fire, you have to walk down 5 flights of stairs? No, that doesn't make sense. You're a senior. Some people, when they're seniors, they can't walk up and down stairs. Senior housing, if you look at Drake has an awesome senior housing plan. They have all these little houses, these little condo houses all connected together. Their senior housing is way beyond any senior housing I've seen anywhere else. That's the type of senior housing we need here in Chelmsford.
Okay, thank you. And John, same question. Potential areas that would support development and would be a benefit to the town and acceptable to the residents that live in that neighborhood or area.
Yeah, I think, the town has a business development director, and she's working very hard to try to fill up the buildings that we have on Route 129. I think I'd like to see a better use made of that whole corridor before we expand into other areas. And I'm talking, just think of where our DPW headquarters is on Alpha Road. You have a lot of older legacy buildings down in that street, and also off of some of the more glamorous buildings are right on 129, but I'm thinking some of those side roads, you could make better use of some of those buildings without infringing on residential areas.
Okay, Mike?
I completely agree with John. I think 129 is the place to focus. I just wish that we had a market that was more likely to give us things we would love. We would love to have, for example, some good biotech in there. I mean, I remember when it was electronics, because I worked at Mercury, and I worked at Apollo. I worked at both of them. And it was good, and it worked well with the neighborhood. I would like to see that happen again. I'm just not sure how the market is going to give us those opportunities. But we, as you said, we have a business development director, and I know she's working hard.
Thank you. Mike, if I could.
Yeah.
Residents are seeing special permit requests that it seems like they're exceeding what I would call a special permit. We're seeing perhaps too many from the developers. Can you talk
Sure.
about
Well,
special
I
permits?
don't really agree with you completely, Brian. A special permit is what you're going to see in front of the planning board. Projects that don't require special permits very often don't even get to the planning board because there's no other approval needed. So the special permit is the mechanism you're going to see, and you should expect, anything that isn't an approval not required or subdivision kind of thing is going to have special permits associated with it. That's what the planning board does.
Okay, thank you. And Doreen, special permits, are there too many, or are we?
I'm not really sure because I just started getting involved and just started going to planning board meetings. So I'm not sure how many special permits have been coming along. But I do know that that's what the planning board is there to do. They're there to listen to and to decide whether those special permits are, are to be approved or not, So, that is their job.
Okay. And John?
Yeah, I think special permits are there for a reason. I think as a future planning board member, what I would be looking for is to see, they're there to provide relief if there's a few small exceptions from the rule. But I think where I'd be concerned as a planning board member is if I start seeing a project that requires 8 to 10 special permits, then that's probably telling me that someone may be trying to force something on a site that may not be designed for that site.
Okay.
That's a good interpretation.
Mike, would you respond to your other two candidates on that?
Okay, I think that's a good observation when you see 8 or 10, and it's not a big project. Large projects are gonna have 6, 8, 10. They're just that big. You have to look at the details of each one, though. If they're asking for relief of 3 parking spaces, that's hardly a big deal. If they're asking for major reduction in some land use area, that is a big deal. So, does that cover that?
That covers it. And Doreen, do you have any side comments
I
relative
agree
to the
with him,
number?
that, if there's too many special permits, and that's something to definitely look into to make sure what's going on here. Are they trying to pull something over our eyes?
Yeah.
What's going on?
This one's a little bit out of the other angle here. Chelmsford's Best Western Hotel and I'm hearing the Holiday Inn to some degree are being used as homeless shelters. And one of the residents wonders what should be done about the homeless camps in Chelmsford, tents behind the Walmart and project, if you will, next to 495 in one town and elsewhere. And he questions, should this go on indefinitely? From a planning board perspective, and I'm going to start with Mike first, certainly the properties were never permitted by the planning
Yeah.
board for that purpose. What experience and background do you bring to the board which allows you to anticipate uses of properties not presented or anticipated by the past planning boards?
Okay, well, the first thing is, you're now talking about the planning function of the planning board as opposed to the regulatory function. That gets handled with the 10-year master plan review and update we finished a couple of years ago, and I can talk about that later if you'd like. As far as homeless shelters on pieces of property, I know of no permit anywhere that would permit something like that, nor do I even know how it would come in front of the planning board. So it's definitely an enforcement problem. I am at a loss to see how the planning board could do much about it, except maybe encourage some more housing.
Okay. And Doreen,
Yes, it's not really a planning board subject or problem, but as a former homeless, and I was a homeless and coordinator for Mass Purg when I was in college. So I dealt a lot with the homeless. So as a former homeless person, I can say that I feel for these people, and they need support, they need help. But a lot of these people don't want to go in.
Right.
They want to stay out in these tents. They don't want to come into a house or into anywhere. And these people that are being housed in our hotels are being called to this area by Lowell with the pretense that they're going to put them up in their hotels, which they have no hotels. So they end up in our hotels, and I don't know, as far as I can see, I mean, it's kind of hard to prove, but I believe that the people that are in our hotels are not US citizens. They're illegal immigrants that are being called here by Lowell.
and John,
Yeah.
trying to bring it back a little bit.
Yeah.
In terms of your experience relative to that.
Yeah, I don't
use.
see that it would be under the regulatory authority of the planning board as far as the, having about the issue with homeless being sheltered in the Best Western and other hotels. I think that the Commonwealth of Mass is under intense pressure right now to try to find shelters, and what they're doing is they're looking into all of the suburbs. I know recently in the last month, I had a call from the Concord town manager about this. And so they're reaching out into all suburbs that they can find because they're under tremendous pressure to try to find hotel space to house people that need the emergency housing. But I do think it can be controlled possibly with law enforcement. I know our police department and others have worked to try to solve problems with the hotel management.
In terms of experience, the planning board might have a resident come in and want to build build a tent farm in their backyard, John, and they would say no. Would you expand on that? I mean, it's a difficult thing for the community to look at it and say, that's not a planned area. We didn't build it into our 10-year plan. Can you comment on the challenge you might have as a planning board member if a resident came in and said, I would like to house a dozen people in my backyard, I'm going to put tents there?
Yeah, I think that you're going beyond, then you're going beyond the zone. We have zoning of a single-family residence. It doesn't say, a single-family residence plus any other temporary housing that you want to add. So I think, I would have to vote no on that.
Okay, and Mike, you heard my challenge.
Yeah.
You'd
Look,
say no?
I'm going to pull out the table from the bylaw, and I'm saying, okay, this isn't RA, this isn't RB, this isn't RC, this isn't IA, this isn't CA, CB, CC. I don't think we have any mechanism for zoning tent farms in the town of Chelmsford.
And Doreen?
That's kind of a tough one. I mean, as a former homeless coordinator, I feel for the people, and I would probably be one of those residents that would want to put them up in my backyard, but.
But as a planning board
But as a
member, it
planning
comes
board
to
member,
you.
I would have to say no, because it's not conducive for the rest of the neighbors in that neighborhood.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the audience? Anybody? Okay. I had asked folks to possibly challenge one of the other candidates. Do you have any questions for the other candidates? Start with Mike. And you
Well,
can-
I have a
yeah.
couple, and I've tried not to give you zingers,
Okay.
but stuff you can think about a bit. Doreen, I'm going to give this one to you.
Okay.
How should the will of the citizens of Chelmsford factor into the decision-making of the planning board, and how do you determine what that will is?
Okay, I think the will of the residents should lay heavily upon the decisions of the planning board. And I think the way that we find that out is to make sure that they know what's going on in their neighborhoods. And we make sure that they're informed and that they come in and they speak to us. That we go out and talk to them and ask them, how do you feel about this? What do you think about this?
And do you have a second question?
Well, I have a question for the man
John?
down at the end.
For John?
Yes.
Okay, please.
This should be right in your wheelhouse. To what degree should town financial concerns influence the deliberations of the planning board?
In my mind, you have to look at what is being proposed for the project. I don't think finance can be the sole criteria to judge something. And by that, I mean, if you approve a project just because it will bring tax revenue, as every business person knows, you have to look at two sides of the coin. You have to look at revenues and costs. So my question is, we often hear when development's proposed, it's going to bring so much revenue to Chelmsford, but we never hear what are the costs, and that's what I'm going to be focused on. Because the costs can sometimes outweigh the revenues.
And Doreen, do you have a question for one or both?
Sure. I'll ask Mike first.
Okay.
Okay, what is your long-term master plan or vision for Chelmsford? Where do you see Chelmsford in 50 to 100 years?
50 to 100 years is a little beyond my planning horizon, but maybe bring it into 10 or 20. I would like to see, as both of you would like, to see a gradual development. We are going to get more densely developed. We cannot avoid that. The market is just way bigger than we are individually. But we can try to control it. We can try to mitigate it. We can try to do some of the things that you talked about with open space.
Senior housing.
And I very much agree with senior housing, and of course, that's a big concern of the state right now, just housing in general, but that includes senior housing with the MBTA district that they've put together, which has a few issues of its own.
So you see this as an MBTA town?
We haven't got much choice. The definition includes us. We are an MBTA town. We've got the MBTA right next door. We've got buses coming through town.
Yeah, we got LRTA.
Yeah, but that counts.
And do you have another question? One, that's for John.
Yeah, okay. In your opinion, what is more important for our town right now? Building new homes in commercial industry or procuring and better developing our existing homes and industry?
I think since our town is pretty much built out, I would go with the redevelopment of existing buildings, rather than trying to take whatever raw land we have left and turn it into either residential or commercial development.
Yeah.
Okay. And John, do you have questions for your other two
Sure.
candidates?
Let's see. For Doreen, could you perhaps share an issue? What made you, if you are elected, could you perhaps talk about a goal that you'd like to work on the planning board?
Well, the first goal I'd want to do is to find out more about what my responsibilities are. I mean, like I said, I'm new to this, totally new, never been a politician. I mean, so I would have to read through everything. I'd have to do an awful lot of reading because I was looking at some of the stuff and seeing how many pages there were to stuff. I'm like, oh my goodness, I got a lot of reading to do. So my first goal would be to learn.
Thank you.
And John, how about with Mike?
Mike, as you know, the Riverneck Road
Yeah.
project was a very controversial project, a very lengthy, I think it was like 18
Yes.
months or so hearing. When the straw poll was taken, I believe the vote was like 4-2.
Yeah.
And it was you and one other member
And,
voted affirmative.
and Tim.
And Tim, if you could just explain why you voted in the affirmative for that project.
Well, what I did is I voted in a straw poll. I did not vote to approve any of the special permits involved. My concern all along with that has been that in order to function as a planning board, you have to give a complete and impartial hearing to the proponent or the presenter. And this is a pretty big project. It was going to take a lot of time. It took more time because there was a 3-month hiatus while they rearranged their idea for access. And several more months involved in a lot of meetings where there was a lot said in public comment, but not a lot of progress made going forward. I think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that that area is zoned industrial. Now, that doesn't mean any industrial project gets to go there, but if you've eliminated office buildings, and you've eliminated, because of the market, and you've eliminated large-scale residential development because of the sewer moratorium that we have, what is left? To have a piece of land of that size, 10.5 acres, and have no plausible industrial project that can go on that land, basically, in my mind, amounts to a taking of that land by the town from its owner. We've got to find ways, given that that's how it's owned, we've got to find ways to accommodate it. Something, and I don't mean that the particular project that was presented was a winner, I don't think it was, but other projects will come, and we will have to look at them with an open mind.
Okay. And John, do you have a rebuttal or a challenge?
No, I
that?
think that,
Okay. Doreen, any? No? Okay. We have a rough timeline of 7:45 to finish this particular section of the debate, but I'd like to have a little more discussion on the MBTA community requirement that the state has now put on towns. And I'll start at the far end. John, can you give some information to the voters about what an MBTA community is and how it affects Chelmsford in particular?
yeah, so my understanding is that the state is basically mandating that all communities must designate a zone for MBTA zoning. And so what they're trying to encourage is that you could have some higher density housing next to, right beside or right near, with access to public transportation. And the thinking is that you would encourage people to take public transportation, use less fuel rather than everyone driving around in their own car, et cetera. I think in a limited area, it may have some potential. I think some towns across the Commonwealth will struggle to try to find an area they can designate next to public transportation.
Okay, thank you. And Doreen?
It's my understanding that we have an LRTA, because we have Lowell Regional Transit Authority. We already have our bus. We don't need the MBTA. I thought MBTA needed a train station. That's what I was under the impression, that there need to be, have a train station to be MBTA. We don't have a train station. We don't need a train station. If we need to take the train, we can go to Lowell, or we can go to Billerica. We're right in between two trains. We don't need our own train. We don't need MBTA, because if you put MBTA into your town, you're inviting the city to come to your town.
And Mike?
I'm not sure your interpretation is right on the money. They say MBTA when we talk about the state mandate, but they actually have stages of, there's an MBTA that's got the station in it. There's the town next to the town that has the station in it, which we most definitely are. And they include bus routes for a number of these purposes. It isn't just trains, and it isn't just MBTA. That said, what they're asking for is that a certain portion of the town be zoned in a way that would allow the high-density housing. And I believe that we can find some areas in town, and they can be areas that are already developed with some modest to high-density housing. There are some areas in town that would fit the bill, and we can probably comply with that mandate without a huge amount of effort and without a huge amount of disruption.
And there was a little challenge there. Either of you two, John or Doreen, care to comment any further?
I still say no to MBTA because I don't want to invent a city. And that's what's going to happen. If MBTA gets into this town is eventually going to become another Burlington.
Yep.
And I don't want to be another Burlington. I don't know about you people. But the people I talk to in Chelmsford like Chelmsford the way Chelmsford is. They came to Chelmsford, they moved to Chelmsford. They've lived in Chelmsford their whole lives because it's this nice, quaint little town that we have. We don't have to worry about the traffic. Have you driven through Burlington? Have you driven through Tewksbury? The traffic is horrendous.
Okay.
I don't want that here.
And Mike, you have a...
Yeah, I
follow-up?
sympathize, but you're not going to stop it. I grew up in Lexington. When I was a kid, Lexington was like, was Chelmsford is now. Belmont was kind of like Lexington. This stuff moves out about one town every generation. Trying to stop it is not going to work. Trying to control it, moderate it, and mitigate it does have some chances to work. But the state has said we're an MBTA town, and there's not an awful lot we can do about it.
Okay. And I'd like to add one. I did get one public comment. Is there a problem in town regarding political lawn signs being taken or defaced? And I'll just ask a simple question here that's posed. Mike, have you had any of your signs lost or defaced?
No, I don't have a huge number out, although I think I've picked good spots. But I haven't had a problem there, but I do recognize that all the candidates need to be aware of the town standards for setting up lawn signs. And I'll have to admit that I have seen some signs out there that are probably in places they shouldn't be. So if each candidate would just go back, give that a close look, I will do the same and make sure that all our signs are in reasonable places.
And John?
Yeah, I'm proud to say all my campaign signs are on private property. None are on any town-owned islands or conservation land. I have not had any problems, knock on wood, with signs being stolen or vandalized.
Okay, and Doreen?
I've had 13 signs stolen and 1 vandalized.
Okay, thank you. And
That's a pity.
just as a kind of closing comment on the sign issue, political signs are free speech, and please don't take them if they're on your property inappropriately. Let the candidate know so they can pick them up. And on public space, there's some questions, so I wouldn't touch one if it was me.
No, I would leave that to the town.
They could, I wouldn't touch it if
Yeah.
I was a town either. There are Supreme Court cases that may challenge somebody taking a sign, so it's best to leave it alone unless it's on your property, and then it's yours. If I could, closing statement, we have a minute closing, and there's a camera in the back of the room, there's certainly voters in this room. But if you would look at the camera and at the end ask for the vote, that'd be good.
Right there.
No, that one right up there.
All in the center in the back. And John first, please.
Thank you. I want to thank the Republican Town Committee for sponsoring this event this evening, to the viewers at home, and to all the attendees. If you want a candidate that's committed to protecting Chelmsford neighborhoods and one that will bring a fresh perspective to the planning board, I respectfully request one of your 2 votes on Tuesday, April 4th. John Souza, number 1 on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. And Doreen, please.
I want to thank the town committee for having us and for everybody that is here and all that are listening. I believe strongly in preserving the quiet suburban integrity of the town of Chelmsford. I will stand firm and follow the planning board's own mission statement, which I've said many times, preserving the character and integrity of the town. This means single-family home neighborhoods and open spaces. This means remaining a mostly residential community and protecting the community from 4-story condominium apartment complexes in their neighborhoods and warehouses next door. This includes protecting the residents of Chelmsford from noise pollution from large tractor-trailer trucks in and around their neighborhoods all hours of the day and night. It includes preserving current residents' rights to privacy by not building tall complexes next to their homes. This also includes keeping our open spaces that provides refuge for our wildlife and works as a buffer for noise pollution and removes carbon dioxide from the air. I am new to this, like I said, I'm new to the whole political scene. I know I've got a lot to learn, but if you want somebody that has common sense and a fresh perspective, please give me one of your 2 votes this April 4th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mike.
Well, thanks also to the Republican Town Committee, particularly for the snacks. I hope I've presented myself as being something of a moderate in terms of the conflict between residential and other development. Other development is going to get to us. We cannot completely stop it. Let's try to control it in a reasonable fashion. On that basis, and on the basis of 14 years of experience, I'd ask for your vote. One of your 2 votes coming up on Election Day. And either way, however it comes, I look forward to serving the town in the future.
And I thank these 3 individuals for stepping up and volunteering to represent you and me and my family and our families in town for the purposes of, why would you spend this amount of time? These are volunteer positions, and I thank all 3 of you for stepping up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you all for coming again. The Chelmsford Republican Town Committee is continuing our debate, and we have 3 out of the 4 selectman candidates. Our 4th, Charles Mooney, is out of town. He's overseas today, and unfortunately we couldn't reschedule the debate. So please recognize that we have 4 candidates for 1 position on the select board, again, volunteer board. And if I could, I'd like to make a little bit of a public announcement. We have a Republic form of town meeting in Chelmsford. We have representatives in each of our precincts. We have 11 precincts, and we have 15 representatives in each precinct. And we go through a 3-year cycle to get residents to come and be our legislators in our town. They decide who spends money and on what. That legislative body has some open seats. They'll be on the ballot. However, we don't have enough folks that volunteered to run for town meeting. So if you are interested in representing yourselves, your families, and your town in the several of the precincts, you can do something called a write-in candidacy. So if you and 9 of your local precinct neighbors write your name in, you can be a town meeting rep. It's not a paid position. You meet a couple times a year, and it's good work. So it's important. So if I could, we vote by precinct, so you can find out what precinct you're in by looking on the town website. And precinct 1 has 3 openings. So there are 3 people that could be elected with the simple write-in. Precinct 3 has 1 opening available for write-ins. Precinct 4 has 1. Precinct 5 has 3. Precinct 6 has 2. Precinct 7 has 3. And precinct 11 has 1. That's arguably 1 out of 15 available seats. And there will be a ballot, and when you have the ballot, there's a block on the bottom that says write-in. You write the name in that you'd be interested in, or your own name. Have 9 other people do it, and you're a town meeting rep. Okay, thank you. The Board of Selectmen is our top executive.
Select Board.
Sorry?
Select Board.
Oh, Select Board. I digress. I've been here too long. We started as a Board of Selectmen almost 200-plus years ago. And a few years back, we changed it to the Select Board. The Select Board is the highest executive body in the town, besides you, the residents. If you look at the town charter shows the town of Chelmsford at the top of the pyramid, and next is Select Board. The town of Chelmsford are the residents. It's not the administration of the town. They work for the Select Board. That's just a little bit of accuracy for it. So the Select Board is a 3-year position, and we have Ken Lefebvre, Rodney Cleaves, Charles Mooney, and Aaron Drew running for 1 seat. So you'll be able to select one of those 4, or you could even write somebody in for those positions. The same rules apply. I don't know if I need to go through those again. We have a minute answer to the questions, and I'll give you 15 seconds if you challenge another candidate. I did send out a question. That wasn't me. I did send out a question to the candidates ahead of time, and I asked them also for a bio. And I'd like them to go ahead and do their bios in advance of the question. Ken Lefebvre?
Sure.
Yours, please.
Sure. Ken Lefebvre. I have resided in Chelmsford since 1993 with my wife, Chris. We've raised 4 boys. I'm proud to say my oldest, Sean, was a Chelmsford police officer. He left at the end of last year to go to Lowell. My son, Joe, Eric, and Matthew. I'm an elected official currently on the Select Board, and I currently serve as the vice chair. In addition to that, I sat on the Master Plan Update Committee, and I'm currently sitting on the Master Plan Implementation Committee. I support various charities here in town, and recently, about 3 or 4 years ago, I became a 6 Middlesex Regiment Minuteman. I'm a partner at the Chelmsford Financial Advisors with my brother Mark. I have 8 siblings all in, and we live within about 15 minutes, 20 minutes of each other. So we're a very close family. For over 31 years, I've been working at Crosspoint Financial, which is right at Drum Hill. So I have a small business here in town, and I've developed a deep relationship with my clients, and I bring that experience here to Chelmsford. It's a very similar process I go through when making those decisions that I use here in Chelmsford on the Select Board. I'm a certified financial planner. I graduated from Bentley College with a degree in economics and finance back in 1992. And for hobbies, I used to raise chickens. I still do bees, and I have a few gardens, and that's what I do on my my weekends for a little bit of enjoyment.
Thank you. Aaron?
Hi, everyone. I'd like to thank the Republican Town Committee for having us, Brian for moderating. Thank you to those who are here in the audience and to those watching from home for taking the time to learn about myself and the other candidates. My name is Erin Drew, and I live in town with my husband and my 3 young children who attend Chelmsford Public Schools. I'm active in the community. I'm a member of the Chelmsford Mothers Club, and we participate in various town sports organizations. I have a professional background in international trade compliance and logistics, and I'm a licensed customs broker issued by the Department of Homeland Security. I am already active in our municipal government. I'm currently a town meeting representative. I'm also a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals, where I've sat for over 4 years now. And during my time in these roles, I think I've gained a good understanding of how our municipality functions. I've come to understand zoning and the important role that it plays in proactively managing development. And I'll use this experience to help Chelmsford plan for the future. And I look forward to serving our town and its residents as a select board member.
Thank you. And Rodney?
Thanks, Brian. Rod Cleaves, obviously candidate for the Select Board. First off, I want to say Aaron and I represent the same precinct as town meeting members.
10.
Go 10. Massachusetts has been my home since 1979, when my family and I moved to Maynard, where I accepted a position in training and course development at Digital Equipment Corporation. With 3 young sons at that time, I became a soccer dad, coach, and trained referee. While in Maynard, I immersed myself in small-town politics. I served on Maynard's Planning Board, the Zoning Board of Appeals, and at the time, we had an ad hoc zoning board when called. It's now been folded into their town meeting as well. As Boy Scout Council President, I watched my sons and other boys grow and mature. I had the privilege of serving as my church's senior high advisor and helped lead several work teams to South Carolina in the winter and Maine in the summer. In 1994, Elaine and I married and chose to blend our families here in Chelmsford. We decided at that time to devote our time to family life as well as hosting nearly 500 foster children since 1994. I've grown to love my new hometown and want what's best for Chelmsford. I'll strive to help and support its residents and commerce while preserving the New England atmosphere. My qualifications are enhanced by my high-tech and civil experiences. I found the ability to see both the high-level proposals and the underlying fine details where they, as the devil says, they live. I retired in 2020 from 25 years of private industry and 22 years of government service. My last position was as the Chief Information Officer at the Bedford VA Hospital. I hold Boston University degrees in electronics engineering and computer science, a master's degree in divinity, and a doctorate in theology from Gordon Conwell. My ultimate qualification is that I'm passionate about this town and I'm offering myself to your service.
Thank you. And the committee did send out a question in advance, and I'd like to ask Aaron if you would consider the following. Current residents of the town of Chelmsford, for the most part, have lived in a quiet suburban, mostly residential community. Zoning changes, large development projects, and urbanization of our town and nearby communities is starting to give us a city-like appearance. What do you plan to do as an elected official and select board member to mitigate city problems and to re-encourage our more New England town-like atmosphere? Aaron?
It's a good question. My family and I love the small town feel of Chelmsford. We love the fact that there's open spaces and trails to hike on. We love the 4th of July parade. We love the farmer's market that sits on the common in the summer. We treasure the holiday prelude and the various other events that the town organizes throughout the year. There are a lot of reasons to love this town. And there are a lot of reasons to never want it to change. But I think the reality is that change is inevitable. Chelmsford is in a geographical location that's competitive for development. And we have parts of town that are not only zoned for development, but that are appropriate for development. Things change, and I think development is coming in one form or another. I think one of the questions that we need to answer is what we want that development to look like. And I think that we should plan proactively for that and stick with that plan. And I think the other question is, what exactly are we trying to preserve? And I think that is our small town culture. So I think encouraging development that benefits our residents while preserving our small town culture will be my focus on the select board.
Thank you, Aaron. And, let's see, Ken,
Oh, you want to go that way?
just to
No,
mess you
no.
up.
All right, thanks. All right, so since you posed it, I wrote it out, but so I'll just read right from that. Preserving the town's character is and should be, to all of us, a great importance. Part of what makes Chelmsford, I think, different than our surrounding neighbors and our surrounding communities is that we do have a small-town feel in a town that supports about 37,000 residents, which I think is impressive, that we can keep that small feel while having so many people in the town. We've done a great job so far doing that, but I think we need to be careful. Having sat on the Master Plan Update Committee and now attending the Master Plan Implementation Committee, I've got a pretty decent inventory of what the valuable resources that Chelmsford has that residents see and appreciate in this town. As a Select Board member, we're working as a team to develop a townwide strategic plan. We've just started this process. The goal of the plan is to build consensus and educate the other town boards on the mid- and long-term plans for the town. And the plan is really a roadmap on how we can navigate the future for Chelmsford. Additionally, I attended many committees and boards and understand the needs and nuances that make the town better. The Planning Board to ZBA, Historical Committee, to Commissions on Disabilities and the Tree Committee. All of these help put together the fabric that makes this town important. And I think listening to all these boards, in addition to speaking with residents, helps me put together the puzzle pieces of what the town should continue to look like in the future.
And Rodney,
Thank you. First time I drove through Chelmsford, I was about 1980 or so. It seemed like I drove through a small provincial town. I fell in love with it, and yes, Chelmsford is special. Your question, however, I must say, is much like when did you stop beating your wife question. We are in a unique position, being at the crossroads of so many major highways and smaller routes. Commuters have found us to be a convenient pass-through town. Prior boards have given away our innocence, and we can't change that history. We are where we are. I can't give you a specific thing, although I agree with both of my opponents, that I can do, but I assure you I will expect to pump the brakes on industrial encroachment and zoning changes. Really?
we're still good, continue.
I lost my place, Lincoln. We need to make long-term decisions. I'm a fan of the long dollar. Bear in mind, the planning board is not accountable to the select board. They are an independent elected board, accountable to town meeting only, while the select board is the town's executive board with a certain amount of oversight and direction. Every initiative coming before the board has to be weighed in its own merit and long-term impact on future generations. I fear that has not always been the case, and that's why I'm running.
Thank you. And Ken, I'll come back over to this end of the table. The town's sewer capacity has maxed out. Can you explain the challenges and if you support building a municipal water treatment facility or exhaust water treatment facility to allow for further development in town? And how do we arrive at a sewer moratorium? Are we overdeveloped? Did we approve too many projects? So kind of a two-part question.
Sure. So I'll start historically, how we arrived there. I think there was a lack of procedure in town calculating what the capacity was that was coming out of projects. So it sort of one day fell in our lap. By the way, there is no more sewer capacity. And that's how that moratorium came into place. So we put a moratorium in place, and now it's a permanent moratorium until we find a solution. As far as building a facility, we are, or have assessed that. That's probably a 8 to 10 year process getting permits from the EPA to build that, and then the question comes where to put it. You can no longer put it near a river. So I think we're trying to find short-term solutions to remove some of the inflows. And we have slightly longer-term solutions we're discussing as a board. And then the very long-term would be if the city of Lowell, because it's not just us, Bill Ricca went over, and the other towns are all going to have this problem since a lot of us feed into Lowell. And there will have to be a larger area solution, in the Merrimack Valley for this problem.
Okay. And if I could, Rod?
Sir, okay. You asked about the sewer being overextended.
Correct.
And you also want to know about the sewer treatment plant. Well, first off, I can tell you, I've worked at sewer treatment plants when I was with Data General. And they're not a fun place to be, and they are huge. You can't just sort of throw one up on the side yard somewhere. It would take a lot of study, perhaps a regional plant, or perhaps we can work with Lowell and expand Duck Island, but I don't think it's expandable. Yes, we are at capacity, but the one thing, and it takes a little bit of an explanation to go through this, I'll be happy to talk to you later. There are sewer credits. A small development could go in and pay a bond to the town, which would go to other houses or other developments where they can put in lower capacity toilets, that kind of thing. And those credits can be translated to the new development. But as far as what we're doing, we pretty much have to live with it now. And I don't know how we ended up with a permanent moratorium. We kept being told it was temporary until they figured out a solution to Duck Island, but it never happened. But it is certainly something, one of those things that comes before the board that has to be looked at and has to be looked at carefully.
Are we overdeveloped and were too many projects approved? Rod?
I would tend to say yes to that. I think there was sort of a rush to get that tax dollar. And, but there were some projects, mostly condo or 4 or 5 story buildings that just simply seemed to be out of place and seemed to be rushed through. I know I'm told that they went through years of approval, but I never saw any of that.
Okay,
So I think we are overdeveloped.
thank you. And Aaron?
Could you repeat the question?
I sure can.
Thank you.
Sure can. Town sewer capacity has maxed out. Explain the challenges and if you support building a local municipal water treatment facility to allow for further development in town. How did we arrive at the sewer moratorium? And are we overdeveloped? Were too many projects approved?
A lot of questions. Okay.
Kind of a long one.
So the challenges. The challenges are that it limits our ability to develop further. And this is something that the town, I think, has been talking about for quite some time. And a few years ago, I thought to myself, oh, God, this is terrible. It's the biggest issue. But I think I've slowly come to realize that I think that depends on your ideas of where we're going and what kind of development we want in town. To some extent, if we don't want to have a whole bunch of new developments, maybe we don't need a whole bunch more sewer capacity. I do think it would be helpful for us to have that, though, for planning purposes. So in regard to whether I support a treatment plan, I think that depends a lot on what kind of plans we make in the near future. How we arrived, I think it's probably a combination of more development than the planners foresaw coming down the pipeline, and maybe a little bit of poor planning, and something that I think I would always do going forward is always plan for more capacity than you need, because we're going to grow and things are going to change. And if you do things proactively, you have the space to wiggle. The wiggle room is good to have, so.
And back at you, Aaron, on the next question. Chelmsford taxpayers have been at the low end of our state's so-called Chapter 70 money for the last 20 years or so. Governor Healy, after our school budget was agreed to between the town manager and the school department, added almost $2 million to Chelmsford's share of available funds. Could you discuss giving back to the taxpayers to compensate for our excess taxes and fees over all these past years? So in other words, free cash typically is kept by the town. This could be considered free cash and payment back to taxpayers who weren't getting the extra $1 million like Billerica and Westford were over all these years.
So first off, yes, I did hear about the increase. Apparently, they've changed the formula to Chelmsford's benefit, and that's wonderful. I'm not sure exactly what the process is, to be completely honest, but I'm not sure that an award that is given to the schools specifically can be given back to the town to be put into free cash. I'm not sure if that is an option. But from what I understand of the way that the school budget operates, they generally have been operating for a good many number of years now under the same increase every year. And that when they do have a surplus, they reinvest it back into the schools, and that they haven't asked for an increase to that amount in quite some time. I mean, $2 million is a lot of money, so I think that that's something that the school district could consider, giving it back to the town if that's an option. Or we could take it out of their budget otherwise, or I'm not sure how that would work. I'm not sure if that's a possibility, but that's something that I would consider, sure.
Okay, Ken, do I need to repeat it, or?
No, you're good. So I was on WCAP this morning, and we were discussing a little bit before we went on the air, and it was explained to me that you actually can't use it to the town. It has to go to the schools. But on the side, I had Paul, the town manager, Paul Cohen, say to me, well, it just kind of offsets what we're currently spending. So I'm going to need a little clarity from Paul on that one, because that just came out this morning. My understanding was there was some strings attached to it. We couldn't do a direct offset against the town's contribution, but there was a way to use some of it towards what we were paying. But I don't think it does not automatically increase the school budgets by $2.2 million. So I think that news is relatively new, and I think more importantly, when you look at the budget that Paul put out this year, there was a tap into the levy limit of about $780,000. And I think the question we'll have to discuss the next time the budget comes up is, what do we do about that levy usage, and is there any way that this newfound Chapter 70 money can be used against that? But my understanding is it can't just be given back to the town. There are strings attached to that.
Okay. And Rod?
Yes. It's a very good question, but like Ken said, the money, this is all relatively new to the town, and we usually don't see anything like this. And I agree with him. There are strings attached to it, and it has to be used to offset the school, but can't be given directly to the school. And you're right, we have to take a serious look at if there are any other strings we're unaware of. It has to be taken a careful look by both the select board and the finance committee. So I don't know where we go from here other than to look at it carefully and look at, what the state expects us to do for it. It's not a free return check that they can send everybody in town a couple $100 and say, there you go. Just can't happen. So it's money that's been put in the general fund with specific purpose, with specific requirements, and we have to take a good hard look at that. So really, it's difficult to answer that, to be honest, because it is something we just got to put the papers in front of us and study them and figure it out, and then make the best decision we can.
Okay. I'll continue on the tax question, and Rod, if you would go first on this. Taxes are high and increasing in Chelmsford. If you were a select board member, would you have a plan to look at cutting spending or stabilizing future or limiting increases? And do you ever foresee reducing the taxes and fee costs to live in Chelmsford?
I would love to reduce the taxes and costs in Chelmsford. I mean, one of the things that kept coming up when I was out meeting people was, how come my children can't live in the same town they grew up in? And it's almost no answer to that, because much of that's controlled by developers and landlords, that kind of thing. Right now, as cost of living goes up, cost of having the town, everything has gone up. Costs more money to fill a pothole in, costs more money we're spending extra money in Duck Island in the sewer system, same thing. I don't see realistically taxes going down, although I would love to take a stab at it. So we need to take a look. This is another initiative that might be coming before the board. We need to take a look at it. But I don't see anything happening as much as I would like to see it happen. And if we found an opening to make something happen, I would support it. But we also can't strangle the finances of the town.
Thank you. Let's see here. It's fun to try to keep track. I think I caught everybody here. Aaron?
Yes, so taxes are high and they are increasing. Everything is increasing. Inflation, I think, has hit the town and its residents very hard over the last couple of years. But promising to lower taxes, I think, is a bad political game, frankly, that I won't do. I don't think that our taxes are going down. I do think that I would look very carefully into cutting spending where we can. I don't think that there's a lot of places that we can cut spending in town, to be completely honest, but that's something that I would look at. And wherever there is an opportunity to reduce the tax burden on our residents, that is absolutely something that I would be in favor of. But I think the long-term goal should be keeping them level. And I think that that is a realistic goal that we can meet.
Okay. And if I could expand on that, keeping them level by what? Increasing level or?
By keeping our budget level and keeping our spending in line with our revenues. And ideally, I'd like to increase revenues in the town, but our costs are also going up. We have a lot of capital projects in the works. We have new PFAS requirements coming down from the federal government. There will be things, and we will always need reserve money, and we will always need money for more projects. I think the increasing revenue is essential, but we need to do everything with balance in mind, so.
Thank you. And Ken?
Wow, there's a lot to talk about there. When we look at the budget in the town, and everybody's talking about, could you go down in taxes? It's not possible. What we can talk about is slowing the rate of increase. For the last 3 or 4 years, I've really been heavy when I speak at town meeting and in discussions with the budget about not hiring new people. And this year, we're not adding one payroll hour to our budget, which I was kind of proud of. We have potentially a deficit coming that we need to deal with. As far as keeping the budget level, the levy limit's going to go up 2.5% a year. What you don't take from residents has to come from the business or vice versa. The money's going to come. So when you talk about some way to to increase revenues, if we increase revenues on the commercial side, it will reduce the amount that's being paid by the residents. But the budget itself is always going to increase. Half our money goes to the schools, another 30% roughly goes to fund OPEB and benefits for retirees. That leaves the town 30%, 20 to 30% that we're running the town on, a $130 million budget. If the goal is to cut 10% off the budget, that means we got to cut a third of town services. I don't even know how you would start looking at that. So a discussion of cutting taxes, I just don't see how that's happening. We should all just be focusing on slowing the rate of increase, which, by the way, it's the whole area. We're right around number 70 in the state for tax revenue that the average residence pays. We've been number 70 in the state, roughly up and down a couple movements. We might be 71, 69 over the last 10 years. We haven't moved out of that line. So that's my answer.
Thank you. And Ken, if I could expand a little teeny bit. So Chelmsford, relative to the other towns, is not exceedingly high? Is that what that?
Relative to other towns, we've stayed roughly in the same spot we've stayed in the lineup for the last 10, well, even more than 10 years, probably 15 years. We rank somewhere around number 70. We fluctuated, I think, down to 62, and we've gone as high as 74 in the state as far as the lineup for taxes. But it really hasn't, out of 351, we really haven't moved too far off that mark.
Okay. And on the cost side, and I'll start with, let's see who we have here. I'll start with you, Ken. On the cost side, the towns, we talked about sewer capacity. We also have a problem with our water contamination, so-called PFAS, or the so-called forever plastics. That Teflon tape that we all used for everything apparently breaks off and stays in the water forever. but it's been measured at our local, in our local water supplies. Do you support building water filtration systems at each of our water districts?
So that's kind of beyond our purview. The water districts are independently run, and we really don't have a say in how they operate their water districts. And, you know, we've invited the water department to come to our meetings, and their response is, well, you can come to our, you know, we can go to their meetings instead. But what they decide to do is up to them. The cost that they incur gets passed on to the ratepayers. That's, you know, again, not something that is under our purview.
Okay. And if I could, Aaron?
So from what I understand, the EPA is going to be pushing towns, or maybe even requiring towns, to actually create treatment plants in the next few years, and that just came out last week. You know, and to Ken's point, that is on the municipal water departments, but I do think that they will come back to the town and look for us to partner with them in funding some of those projects. You know, and this falls into kind of my previous point where we might need some money to do things in town here and there. I'm not sure that that's something that I would support, but it might be something that we have to support per federal regulations. But I will add, given, you know, my professional background, I have a background of dealing with federal regulatory agencies. And I think that the town's willingness to work with those agencies and ability to understand the regulations as they come to us will be important going forward.
Okay, thank you. And Rod, please.
Thank you. I had a chance to talk with both the directors and the staff at all three water districts, and they all told me pretty much the same thing. Aaron touched on it. They're expecting regulations to come down from the EPA. In fact, they've seen some rumblings on it already, where they're going to be required to put in hyperfine filtering in the water districts. But that, again, falls under the water districts. And there is both federal funding and possibly some state funding that will be coming down that way. But the water districts themselves have to basically work within their own scope and the people in their water districts. If East Chelmsford Water District wants to raise its price by 10% and the Central District wants to raise its price by 7% to do this, this is something they're going to do. Select Board has no oversight on this. The water districts answer to both federal and state regulations. And it looks like the EPA is going to be coming down pretty hard on them sometime in the next 6 to 12 months. So there's little oversight the Select Board has on this.
And expand a little bit on that, 15-second response. Rod, would you consider taking over the water districts and bringing them into the town? We all drink the water. And I know Central Water District, for example, has an election in April that water takers may or may not even know about. Would you consider, as a select board and as a town, taking over the three water districts that are in our town?
You know, I've gone back and forth on that in my own mind. And it's not like I go with the last person I spoke with. But many other towns have taken over their independent water districts, and I would be in favor of taking a very hard look at that. And my knee-jerk reaction probably is, yes, I would want to take them over. But I might be able to be talked out of it, too. I'm not quite sure.
Okay. And Aaron, take over the water district? You drink it.
Yes, I drink it, and to be completely honest, I don't love drinking the water in Chelmsford. Something that recently came to my attention was that some towns in the area were approached in the last year in regards to tapping into the Quabbin Reservoir lines, and that's something that I found really interesting. I think it would be complicated to remove ourselves from remove the water districts, but you know, I think when something like this comes down the pipeline and there's a lot of money at stake, we should look at all the options and weigh them very carefully. And that's something that I would consider
Okay,
doing.
thank you. Ken, take over the water districts?
Well, I think it's a moot point because I don't think we have the ability to step in and take over a water district. My understanding is you would need 50% of the ratepayers to vote to have that turned over. So you would, and that's not 50% or a majority vote. You would need half of the water takers to actually respond and vote in the affirmative in order for the water department to turn themselves, either join each other or come to the town. And considering the fact that we only get about 11% showing for a town election, I don't know how you get 50% to actually respond to a rate taker's vote to combine the water districts or have the town take it over.
Okay. And I'll start with Ken on this one. Several years ago, Chelmsford Town Meeting passed a bylaw prohibiting double telephone poles.
Oh,
You can tell I have gray hair. As a select board member, will you commit to, on this problem, to enforcing that bylaw? Would you agree to request utilities responsible to remove them by a date certain or enforce the fine that was approved by town meeting?
yeah. So I think you need to watch some back meetings because it is a bane of my existence to see double polls. And I've asked, every time that there's a poll request in front of us, well, not every time, but most of the time I'll bring up the double polls, especially if I drive around and see a lot of them. A lot of the times, though, the process to get rid of a double pole or a broken pole, the electric company comes in, they remove the electrical wires, they swap it over. Then the cable companies come in. The last one that has to do it is the fire department. And believe it or not, it's usually the last one that holds it up for the pole to be removed. So we do get updates from, and we have a liaison at the electric department at National Grid who gives us updates on the double poles, and we try to stay on top of it. My understanding is everybody else has got to sign off, and once everything's removed, the pole can be removed. But a lot of times, it's not just the electric company, it's Verizon, it's Comcast, and then finally the fire department that has to remove their wires.
Okay. And Aaron, double poles.
Double poles. At a time when there's a lot of talk about putting everything under the ground, I obviously would like to get rid of the double poles. But, to Ken's point, I don't think you can just go about ripping electric poles out of the ground without careful consideration for the process that those companies have to go through to do that. In regard to enforcement, though, yes, I think I would try to hold them accountable for doing the job of removing them that they're supposed to be doing. I would attempt to hold them accountable, yes.
Okay. And Rod, please. Double poles.
I'm a little bit on both sides of or both my opponent's sides. What surprised me when I first started looking into the double pole issue is that not every pole is owned by the same company, and sometimes we can't even figure out who owns which pole. And I'll tell you, there's something else, not just double poles, but poles and a half. There's a couple poles in my neighborhood where one pole was cut off about 10 feet above the ground, and it's hanging off the other pole by some type of support beams. And I honestly didn't know the fire department was holding them up, Ken. That's news to me. But if we could find out who to find or who to contact, or if there is a contact, yes, I would want to hold them accountable. In fact, perhaps it's something that the enforcement department can help us with. I'm not even sure we've identified where there is a double pole or a pole and a half. But you're right, and they're not all Verizon and Power. Some of them are owned by Xfinity. Thank you, Lincoln.
And Brian, just to be clear on the double poles.
Yes.
In my opinion, they don't hang around long. We just have a lot of them that get swapped out. There's a lot of distracted driving going on right now, and more than ever, we're having people hitting poles, and then another double pole goes in. By the time they get that one fixed, everybody does their work, removes all the wires, everybody's squared away. There's been another pole hit, and then you got another double pole. I'm not knocking the fire department. I'm not knocking Comcast or Verizon. It's a lot of wire work. It's going on all the time, and it just seems consistently every week poles are getting hit. And as soon as you get one out, you get another one in. So put your phones down.
Yep.
Can I respond to that, please?
Yes, go ahead.
As quick as I can. In my immediate neighborhood, I can think of two places where there's and I think I've seen more, two places where there are telephone poles literally in the middle of the intersection, right where the pavement is. They're not on some kind of an island with curbing around them. And they get hit probably every, well, Aaron, you live in the neighborhood, maybe every 5 years.
What street's that?
Specifically Sprague Avenue. The other one, I'm not sure of the street name. But I mean, they're right there in the middle of the right-of-way. And that irks me more than seeing the double poles.
Well, Sprague Avenue, I think, is a truck. I feel like that is probably truck-related.
Probably.
The UPS trucks, which I've heard about in the past,
Wouldn't be
yeah.
surprised.
That Sprague Avenue pole gets hit by trucks.
But Ken, if you're seated, I'll be more than happy to find these and give you the street address.
No, anybody.
Sprague Avenue.
Well, everybody knows my cell phone number's on the town. I don't have a burner phone. It's my actual cell. It's on the town website. If you see double poles and they're not getting swapped out.
Yeah,
text me, call me, we'll-
and to be fair, the pole has a number on it. You give it the street name and the number that's the little aluminum thing on it. And the secondary pole usually has the same number.
Yeah, but
Five-
don't get out and go look at the number. You're gonna get hit. Just give me the address.
You stand behind the double pole, then the car that hit it
We'll
can't
find
hit
it.
you. Yeah, there were 5 on Turnpike in the last couple of years that were hit. So they can come down, it's just you have to hit them with a car to do it. It's a simple questions that are the most fun.
There's the solution. There you go,
There
Brian.
is, there is.
Take away driver's licenses.
The last one, to be fair, the last one on Turnpike, excuse me, took 2 ambulances and 3 cars in that accident. And that's the scarier part. We have to pay attention to safety that's relaying around double poles. There's one on Wilson at the corner of the town hall that makes it so you get traffic blocked, you can't see around it. That's a real, at least cut that one 10 foot up like Rodney was mentioning. The next question, and I'll ask, I think Ken start on this one. What's the most important values that define Chelmsford for you? And how will you defend those values over the next 3 years to make Chelmsford a better place to live?
I think the most defining value that or maybe a better way to answer it is what do I appreciate most about the town? When you sit and you're running for a select board, and now this is my 3rd time out meeting the public, am absolutely amazed and humbled at the quality of the character of the people of Chelmsford. Everybody I've talked to, it doesn't matter what side of the issue they sit on, they're very respectful to each other. We can all sort of get along, and if we don't agree on the same point, after it's over, we put it behind us and we move on. And I think that the sense of community we have through all the different events we have in town, and I think we're a very open-minded community. We host a lot of different events, and I think we do a great job supporting each other and just being a wonderful community, especially at the key times of the year, 4th of July and at the holidays. It's just a great part to be part of this. It's great to be a part of all the events and part of that community and have a hand in some of what takes place and how it's developed.
How can you make it better? Just a real quick.
Well, actually, it's interesting you asked that question. I had a meeting last week with a bunch of different organizations that put on events in town. And I think when we compared the calendar that we have of events that's coming up for this year, we will have an event downtown or somewhere in the center or around town every weekend, starting the weekend before Memorial Day and going all the way through the weekend after Columbus Day. And I think that's a great way to build community in the town, whether it's a farmer's market or artisans on the brook or something out at the Paul Center. Paul Center's having an Easter egg hunt coming up. That's the next event on the calendar for anybody who's asking. Or you're out at, the old Agway Maxwell's attending an event there. I think that's all great ways to meet your community and see people, especially during the winter where we don't see each other a lot, and just make sure we're all doing good and okay.
Thank you. And Rodney?
First off, I'm going to agree with everything Ken said, down pat. Chelmsford has 4 uniquely distinct historic centers. Of course, you get the big one, Vinyl Square, and a couple others. But the people in this town are amazing. If you look at the maps carefully, you'll find we're well over 20 residential neighborhoods. And while you may not know who your neighbor is directly, I know I don't know all my neighbors, you can come down to the town center on the weekends, especially in the summertime, or Maxwell's. Maxwell, the idea of the winter marketplace at Maxwell's, I thought was inspired. And we have people willing to step up and take the initiative to do that. And let's face it, we've got the most kick-ass 4th of July parade than any place in the surrounding area. And the events that go on in the Common during the parade, you just can't beat that. And we need to keep that going. I love the New England provincial flavor of Chelmsford within those historic centers. But we are also a crossroads community and a pass-through community. We have to be careful about that. I'd like to see a little bit more traffic calming through what we call Chicken Corner. I'm not sure if that's ever going to get fixed, but yeah.
Okay, thank you. Aaron?
I agree with all of this, obviously. But I think, the thing that really makes Chelmsford Chelmsford is the people who live here. It's funny, you get involved in our municipal government, and you start to meet all of these other people who are involved in our municipal government. And they become friends, and they become educators, and they teach you about town. And, you really see how much effort and how much love all of these people put into running this town. And it's that's something that I have found personally amazing. And then as officials, as elected and appointed officials, they run these events to everyone's point, that really help maintain the small town feel and build those relationships among the officials and the various boards in town and among the public. And I think that's really important.
How are you going to make it better if you're a select board member?
I think it's important to help people stay in town. I think housing is a really important conversation. Senior housing comes up a lot. I think we're at a point where we have kind of the boomers coming up and they want to stay here. That's something that I think would be helpful to kind of keep those people in town and pay them back for their service and allow people to stay in town that want to stay in town.
Add those kids to the school.
Yeah.
We have good school.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'd like to extend just a little bit more. We started a little bit late, so if you don't mind for a couple more minutes. And Ken, I wanted to ask, Chelmsford is in a historic town. Do you have a little tidbit of Chelmsford history that not many people know about, or if you think about it, it's kind of a weird question, but something the rest of the folks probably don't know about historic.
He's a Minuteman. That's
Chelmsford.
not fair.
Yeah, well, I started with him. Think about it.
I don't know. People who are active in the town probably know it, but for the general public, if they're watching, I find it really interesting that the church in the center of town that rings the bell every hour on the hour, although it may be a few minutes off depending upon what day of the month it is, that we own the top of it, but the church owns the bottom of it. And as a select board member, since it is a part of the town, I think we're allowed to actually request to go up there and inspect that bell and everything. So someday, I think if I get reelected, I might actually ask to go up there. As a Minuteman, we're allowed into the North Church in Boston, into that steeple. So it would be my second steeple. I think it'd be kind of neat. But yeah, we own the top part of the church, and the church owns the bottom part, which I find amazing.
Fascinating. Aaron, little historic tidbit, Chelmsford.
I've got something, although I'm sure that everybody who's in this room already knows this, and a lot of the people watching do. But it's something that I've shared with some people who don't know, regarding the center of town and the fact that up until, 20, 30 years ago, there were no lights there. And just when you think it's crazy now, people tell you that, and then they tell you that it was called Chicken Corner. That's something that I found really interesting. So, and Ken,
We have a
an
new
FYI.
chicken corner.
Ken, if I win, I'll bring you up in the steeple with me, okay?
Thanks. Just so everybody knows, we have Dave's Hot Chicken going in in Drum Hill, right next to Boston Chicken, across from Popeyes.
Chicken
That is now
corner.
the new chicken corner.
It's true. Little commercial break there. Rod,
Thanks.
historic tidbit.
I'm sorry. Ken, if I win, I'll take you up too. Or maybe all three of us can go together. I would
There we
like to
go.
see that. A little bit of historical tidbit, yeah. Down in South Chelmsford, we call it Kate's Corner now. It used to be called Byam's Corner. And of course, we have the Byam School down there. The Byam family established one of the first and largest match factories in the United States. They called them Lucifer Matches then. And the foundation of the homestead and a rebuilt version of the homestead is still there if you want to see it. But they were one of the first companies in the early, 1700s, that actually had a national sales recognition. They shipped them all over the place and licensed other companies to build the same match. I thought that was fascinating.
Okay,
Rod doesn't know is how much trouble you just got me in. My wife's cousins are Bioms. And the fact I didn't bring that up, I'm going to probably get hammered tomorrow.
Yes!
And the match factory did burn down?
Yes, it did. Yes, it did.
Answers why we have South Chelmsford Fire Department.
It was Mrs. Brown's cow.
Okay, and I did get a couple questions from the audience, thank you for that. I'm going to ask the same one, candidate signs. Just, Rod, lose any signs this year?
Yes, I did. Of all the candidates running, I probably bought the fewest number of signs. I only bought 25 signs. I didn't know there were going to be so many out there. And as near as I can tell, I've lost 4 or 5 signs, and a couple of them were vandalized, but left in place. So somebody not only messed up my sign, they also littered the ground with it. Thanks very much.
Okay.
But yeah, I have lost some.
And Aaron?
I have not had any loss per se. I did get a little ambitious in delivering them, and a couple of them got buried in snow and had to go be dug out. But no lost or vandalized signs that I know of.
Ken?
I mean, I'm proud to say that of the 350 I put out so far.
Sounds about right.
I haven't, you know, for just about every one of them, I received a call, went and put them up myself, but they're all, as far as I can tell, still standing, and I do drive around and check. But they're all on private residence where the residents agreed to put the sign up, and there they sit, and they're all theirs, as far as I know.
Thank you. And I hesitate a little bit, we're nonpartisan. The municipality, it doesn't matter what party you're in, but I did get a question here that says, what political party are you in? I'm a Republican, and since I got it from the audience here, feel free to glare at me and not answer, or give me a hint from the town, that's the question.
Is that to me? I'm sorry.
Rod?
Yeah, fine. Many of you know I ran for state rep last summer as a Republican. And like most Republicans in this state, I got about 33% of the vote, which actually was considered pretty good. I'm also a member of this Republican Town Committee. So I'm just not aware of my badge. But yeah.
Thank you. Aaron?
I am unenrolled and a very much independent voter.
Very good. And Ken?
Ditto.
Ditto. I don't know.
But to that end, you know, Brian, it's funny you bring that up. I find in talking with most people in the town, we're not too far off the mark from each other. What divides us from whether you claim to be Republican or unenrolled or Democrat. But, you know, in the town, again, the political line has really never come into play. There's really not any topic in this town that as a select board member that you sit over, that you look at and say that your party plays into the decision.
I agree. Brian, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Anybody who's taken any of my literature, the tagline on everything I printed this season it says right there, it's about the town, not the politics.
Yep.
That's
Good
it.
tagline.
And
That's it. And anybody
think-
can steal it if you want.
Yeah, I think that's the gist of it. Folks are curious, and there have been comments about political parties, and it's important municipalities really don't have political parties per se. And I can vouch for all 3 of these folks here that it never comes into question. I'm conservative. I think I can spend my money better than the government can for my family and myself. That's just the belief system. So if we could, I think I started on this end of the fence here. We have a camera in the back of the room. All the voters are pretty much there. Have a closing statement, and please at the end ask for the voters out there to vote for you. And Rod, if you would start, please.
I have to find it in my thing here. Well, first off, Brian, thank you for moderating this show, and thank you for the CRTC for hosting this forum. I know these days elections tend to turn on perception and popularity rather than qualifications, history, or future intentions. I'm asking Chelmsford to consider the experience and goals of your candidate. Chelmsford is both a drive-through community and a crossroads community, a fate of geography that leaves us in a unique position. We are primarily residential, but with 4 historic districts, as I've already said. Many major and secondary routes pass through us. I just want you to know, as much as we're industrial, commercial, and have a huge residential population, I am up to the challenge. We want to preserve our New England heritage without stifling our progress. I know how I'm perceived. I tend not to take myself seriously, but all my life it's about my family and my job, all of which I take very seriously. It's the intelligence, spirit, intentions, and spine you're hiring. I promise to be visible and accessible for the next 3 years. I ask for your help this April, and I hope you hire me to be your select member.
Thank you. Aaron?
Thanks, Brian. Thank you again for hosting, for moderating. You know, in the name of research, I recently asked a friend and a supporter, when you speak to people and encourage them to vote for me, why do you tell them that you're voting for me? And he said, I tell them that you're smart, you're hardworking, you're reasonable, and that you care. And, you know, I thought that's wonderful, and I thanked him accordingly, and I sat back, and I thought to myself, you know, those aren't attributes that a lot of people in our municipality don't share. I think that there's a lot of that out here, and at this table, frankly. But so what makes me different? You know, for one, I have the professional experience to be successful in the select board. I have a regulatory professional background. I'm a town meeting rep, and I'm a long-term member of our zoning board of appeals. Secondly, there's my personal background. Growing up as the oldest of 5 children, we were taught to listen, to process facts objectively, and to always form independent opinions. We were taught that there are times to keep those opinions to yourself, but when it's important and your opinion matters, you need to speak up. My whole life I've been a listener, a learner, and a leader. As a select board member, I'll work hard and I'll be a leader for our town. And with that in mind, I respectfully ask for your vote on April 4th.
Thank you. And Ken?
Sure. Well, thank you again for hosting this, and thank you to the Republican Committee for having this tonight. It's great to be out in front of everybody. I've served the board now for 6 years, and I think my track record shows I'm always open to discussion, listening to the facts. I can change my mind on topics. I have changed my mind when the discussion and the facts present. So I have a very high degree of empathy for people, and I like to listen and get to know the people. And so when we go through any discussion on that board, it's not my decision that has to prevail. I think the board itself works well together. We've done a great job in the community. We've done a great job for the community, and I hope I can do it for another 3 years. So to that end, if you could vote for me on Tuesday next week, I would much appreciate it. I am the top on the ballot, so just go right to that first box and just circle that box, and I would appreciate it. Thank you.
Fantastic. And again, the election is Tuesday, April 4th, from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m.
Yes.
And there are 3 voting locations in town. Look up on the list. If you go down to Town Hall, they have the sample ballots in green all the way up the steps as you go up towards the select board room. If you're not sure who you're voting for your town meeting rep, call them. They're all on the list. They're online as well. So please go out and vote. This municipal voting for one of these 3 folks here in our planning board committee is the most important vote you'll be doing in the next 3 years, frankly. President and the vote that always gets everybody out is not as important as the folks who run your town for you and represent you locally here that you can call. So please get out and vote on Tuesday, April 4th, and consider holding signs or putting a lawn sign at your house. It gets you involved. Thank you so much, and I appreciate you all being here. And I'm sorry, I regress. Charles Mooney is the 4th person running for Select Board. There will be another debate. The Chelmsford Business Association is having a debate in a couple of days on the 30th, so please tune into that or come and see them. Thank you.